who will read? Shanti, you will read?
Yes, I will read.
Go ahead.
This is not to say that the Supreme is not self-existent and self-sufficient. God exists in himself and not by virtue of the cosmos or of man, while man and cosmos exist by virtue of God and not in themselves, except insofar as their being is one with the being of God. But still, they are a manifestation of the power of God, and even in its eternal existence, their spiritual reality must in some way be present or implied, since otherwise there would be no possibility of their manifestation or manifested. They would have no significance. What appears here as man is an individual being of the divine. The divine extended in multiplicity is the self of all individual existences. Moreover, it is moreover, it is through the knowledge of self and the word that man arrives at the knowledge of God, and he cannot attain to it otherwise. It is not by rejecting God's manifestation, but by rejecting his own ignorance of it and the results of his ignorance that he can best lift up and offer the whole of his being and consciousness and energy and joy of being into the divine existence. He may do this through himself, one manifestation, or he may do it through the universe, another manifestation. Arriving through himself alone, it is possible for him to plunge into an individual emergence or absorption in the indefinable and to lose the universe. Arriving through the universe alone, he can sink his individuality either in the impersonality of a universal being or in a dynamic self of universal conscious force. He merges into the universal self or he becomes an impersonal channel of the cosmic energy. Arriving through arriving through the equal integrality of both and seizing through them and beyond them on all the on all the aspects of the divine, sorry, he exceeds both and fulfills them in that exceed sorry.
It's coughing.
Srinki, I'll continue. Don't
Yes,
worry. I'll
yes,
continue.
okay.
I'll tell you.
yes,
Let
I
I'm
Archana
continuing after that.
yes, sorry.
Arriving through the equal integrality of both and seizing through them and beyond them on all the aspects of the divine, he exceeds both and fulfills them in that exceeding. He possesses the divine in his being, even as he is enveloped, penetrated, pervaded, possessed by the divine being, consciousness, light, power, delight, knowledge. He possesses God in himself and God in the universe. The all knowledge justifies to him its creation of himself and justifies by him perfected its creation of the world it has made. All this becomes entirely real and effective by an ascension into a supramental and supreme supernature and the descent of its powers into the manifestation. But even while that consummation is still difficult and distant, the true knowledge can be made subjectively real by a spiritual reflection or reception in mind, life, body, nature.
Nature. So, he says so many things. Huh? So, first we'll see the summary of what he's saying, then we'll go into each one, because his words must be understood very clearly what he's meaning by each word. So, I will now summarize what he said in this paragraph. Then we'll go through each sentence. What we have stated in the previous paragraph may seem to imply that God depends on man and the universe. But this is not so. God is self-sufficient to himself and needs nothing else, whereas man and cosmos both need God and cannot exist without him. This is what we saw yesterday. Okay, so the universe needs God. If God is not there, the universe cannot exist. And if God is not there, the individual also cannot exist. In fact, even if the universe is not there, individual cannot exist. Okay? So, still, the unity of all the three implies that even when God seems to stand alone, man and cosmos are secretly, inherently present in him. Otherwise, they could never be manifested seemingly outside and independent of him. The manifestation of universe and individual is usually, as we understand it, within himself. So that's what is important. Let us note also that man, only when he knows himself and cosmos, can know God. God cannot be known by rejection of the cosmos or by rejection of the individual man, Buddhism. Okay? Now, he is using these words God, he is meaning the transcendent, because it is a personal aspect. Okay? And in the transcendental, you can have the personal aspect as well as the impersonal aspect. Okay? This is what he said. Then I continue with the summary. When man knows himself fully, he can merge exclusively into God, and the universe need not exist for him. Bhakti path. Okay? Personality aspect. When man knows the universe fully, he can merge himself completely into impersonality and become an agent of the universal force, consciousness, etc. Then there is no individuality, there is a knowledge path. Okay? So many different possibilities. He is examining each possibility and telling us. So, if he knows God fully, then the universe does not exist for him, because that's a transcendent. If he knows the universe fully, okay, that's it. He merges himself into the impersonality. He merges himself into the impersonality, and the individual disappears. So in one case, the universe disappears in the transcendent, and in the cosmic, the individual disappears. Individual ego disappears. Actually, there is some sort of true individuality, which is not the ego, which exists. But in the Buddhist plan, even the individuality disappears altogether. You become, you don't experience the infinite, you become the infinite. So when you become the infinite, the individual doesn't exist. I am reading that again, so that's very clear. When man knows himself fully, he can merge exclusively into God, and the universe need not exist for him. Okay? This is the bhakti path, personality aspect. When man knows the universe fully, he can merge himself completely into impersonality and become an agent of the universal force, consciousness, etc. Then there is no individuality at all. This is the Sayujya Mukti, the knowledge path. Personality and impersonality can be experienced separately, but they must also be experienced simultaneously. Okay? We remind you of the Ramakrishna story. First, he had the personal aspect of the divine, and Totapuri, the Advaitic, the Brahman consciousness, he had the consciousness of the impersonal. And each one teaches the other. Ramakrishna is taught by Totapuri to go to the impersonal aspect of the divine, and Ramakrishna teaches Totapuri the personal aspect of the divine. I told the story earlier, but this is a good instance of this one. But this is possible only in the supramental gnosis. In the supermind, man transcends his outer nature as well as the cosmos and gets the benefit of both. In the supramental, he gets benefit of both. Both means individual as well as universal, personal and impersonal. The personal and the impersonal aspects both are merged in the supramental, or you can call it the gnosis. He experiences the harmony of both, not as sums, but as integrally the same. Man then possesses God as God possesses the universe. This is the final stage of the spiritual journey of man. Of course, in a sense, there is no end to the evolutionary ascent. That's what it says. Okay? So clear, he is telling you all the different possibilities. Now we'll go to each sentence and see what is said. This is not to say that the Supreme is not self-existent and self-sufficient. He has told us earlier that all the three have to be known. Okay? So, and it is the Supreme needs the individual and the cosmos. There is an inherent need in him to manifest in the cosmos and also create the individual. This is not to say that the Supreme is not self-existent and self-sufficient. God exists in himself. So when he is using the word God, he is meaning the transcendent. Okay? The transcendent. God exists in himself and not by virtue of the cosmos or of man. Okay? Even if man and cosmos disappear, he will exist. While man and cosmos exist by virtue of God and not in themselves, except in so far as their being is one with the being of God. They do depend on God. But still, they are a manifestation of the power of God. And even in his eternal existence, their spiritual reality must in some way be present or implied. They are, who is they? The cosmos and the individual. But still, they are a manifestation of the power of God. And even in his eternal existence, their spiritual reality must in some way be present or implied. There is a suggestion here that God cannot or need not remain only to himself. Okay? He is almost bound to express himself in the universe, create the universe and the individual. See, these are all words which are very possible misinterpretation. God need not create the universe and the individual, but there is an inherent need in him to do that. Okay? So, at a mental level, it can create a problem, but at another level, it doesn't create a problem. God theoretically can remain by himself, but there is an inherent need in him to manifest the universe as well as the individual. Okay, so then we are saying the individual and the cosmos are inherent in seed form in God. That's what he's saying. And even in eternal existence, the spiritual reality must in some way be present or implied. Since otherwise, there would be no possibility of their manifestation, or manifested, they would have no significance. What Swami is saying, if the seed is not there, how can the tree come? So the seed of the cosmos is there in God, and it is up to God to manifest it. The seed of the individual also is there in God, and he has a choice of manifesting or not manifesting. Okay? So if the seed is not there, cosmos is there in God permanently, and so is the individual. Okay? So in that sense, they can also be self-existent in God. That's what he's saying. Many of these things are very difficult to understand for the human mind because existent and non-existent, self-existent and not self-existent. So these things create a problem for man. But they were simply saying, at the higher levels, both are possible at the same time. Okay. I continue with the what appears here as man is an individual being of the divine. Very clear. Amsha Sanatana. The individual is a portion of the eternal human, the eternal divine. Is a portion. What appears here as man is an individual being of the divine. The divine, extended in multiplicity, is a self of all individual existences. So, the three levels. Level 1, at the lower level, is the individual, created by the universe. Level 2, the universe, which is created by the transcendent. So, it's from top to bottom. God can remain without manifestation, but he does manifest himself, and that is the universe. And then the universe, in turn, manifests the individual. Moreover, it is through knowledge of the self and the world, that man arrives at the knowledge of God and he cannot attain to it otherwise. In other words, if you want to go to the high, there is no double promotion. You have to go first to the universe and then you can only go to God. Okay. That's what I'm saying. If you want to go to the ultimate, okay, he's saying very clear what he's saying. Moreover, it is through the knowledge of self and the world that man arrives at the knowledge of God and he cannot attain to it otherwise. So first of all, he must understand what the world is, then he must understand what the self is, and then only he can go to the third level. Without that, not possible. A kindergarten child cannot go to knowledge straight away. He has to go through the intermediate stages. That's what is being pointed out. He cannot attain to it otherwise. It is not by rejecting God's manifestation, but by rejecting his own ignorance of it and the results of the ignorance, that he can best lift up and offer the whole of his being and consciousness and energy and joy of being into the divine existence. So very clearly Sri is saying that the Mayavadin and the Buddhist, okay, they cannot know God if they reject the world. So they can know only one aspect of the divine. They can know his infinity, they can know his peace, but they cannot know God, power and Ananda. They cannot know if they reject the world. To know God, the transcendent fully, you must know both. You must know the world as well as the self. The self is the cosmos at the second level. So, but by rejecting his own ignorance, so you don't reject the physical world if you want to go to the highest level. You reject your ignorance of it and the results of your ignorance. Results of your ignorance, the wrong behavior in the physical world, the wrong actions that he can best lift up and offer the whole of his being and consciousness and energy and joy of being into the divine existence. He may do this through himself. Now, Sri is giving all the different possibilities. He may do this. Do what? Go to the divine existence. He may do this through himself. That means by the bhakti path. One manifestation. Or he may do it through the universe. So first you universalize yourself by the self and then you can go to God. Another manifestation. Two different types. If you realize the divine within yourself, okay, as he's saying, through himself, then it's a bhakti path. But it's also possible for him to plunge into an individual emergence or absorption in the indefinable and to lose the universe. So he can do it in two ways. One manifestation is through himself, and the other manifestation is through the universe. If you do it through the universe, you get the impersonal aspect of the divine. And if you do it through yourself by bhakti, you get the aspect of the personal aspect of the divine. Arriving through himself alone, it is possible for him to plunge into an individual emergence or absorption in the indefinable and to lose the universe. If you do it through bhakti, the universe may not exist for you. Only you exist and your object of adoration, the divine, exists. Nothing else. You lose the universe. But the other way, arriving through the universe alone, okay, not through himself, but by the external universe, he can sink his individuality either in the impersonality of universal being or in a dynamic self of universal conscious force. So this is again the famous sentence in Life Divine. He is explaining that you can go to the if you go to the universe, there are two ways there also. And which are the two ways? He can sink his individuality. The ego disappears and you become absolutely impersonal. You experience the self, which is infinite, eternal, and featureless. But this he can do in two ways. He can sink his individuality either in the impersonality of universal being. This is the Mayavada path or the Buddhistic path, but also the Advaita path. You see the physical world is unreal. Or you may experience it in the dynamic self of universal conscious force. There is a cosmic consciousness. Okay? The world is not unreal to you. The dynamic self means movement. And movement means the physical world. So you possess the physical world. So it's universal consciousness, cosmic consciousness, you can do it through the universe. At that time, what happens, he's saying, he merges into the universal self, or he becomes an impersonal channel of the cosmic energy. Okay? So you can become impersonal yourself, you can experience yourself. Or he merges into the universal self. Okay? Or he becomes an impersonal channel of the cosmic energy. Arriving through the equal integrality of both, which is both the personal and the impersonal, okay? The individual as well as the cosmic. If you do that, arriving through the equal integrality of both and seizing through them and beyond them, through them, very clear, through the individual as well as through the universe, and beyond them, God, the combination of both. That's what it says. Beyond them. Beyond them is the third level. He, and beyond them, on all the aspects of the divine, he exceeds both and fulfills them in that exceeding. When he exceeds cosmos and individuality, he fulfills both the universe as well as the individual. He exceeds both and fulfills them in that exceeding. He possesses the divine in his being, even as he is enveloped, penetrated, pervaded, possessed by the divine being. So let's see. If he is enveloped, he sees the universe all around him, and he is penetrated, it comes into him. Pervaded, he also sees himself being pervaded everywhere, possessed by the divine being. And possessed by what? Divine being, consciousness, light, power, delight, knowledge. Divine being, Sat. Consciousness, Chit. Light, also Chit. Power, Shakti. Delight, the Ananda aspect. Knowledge is also an aspect of consciousness. He possesses God in himself and God in the universe. If you go to level 3, you can possess God in himself, the transcendent, and God in the universe, the universal. Then at that time, you don't truly an individuality. The all knowledge justifies to him its creation of himself and justifies by him, perfected, its creation of the world it has made. So at the last level, at the third level, all the mystery, everything gets solved. Personal, impersonal are together, Purusha, Prakriti are together, the finite and the infinite are all together. Everything gets harmonized. Not as in the middle term, opposites. In the middle term, Purusha and Prakriti are separate. Knowledge and will are separate. But both are real. And then you go to the third level, everything becomes one. The all knowledge justifies to him its creation of himself and justifies by him, perfected his creation of the world it has made. So that is very fond of the word justify. The all knowledge justifies to him his creation of himself. What does it mean? It means that you understand the purpose of God creating the individual. Otherwise, when you are in the physical world as we are now, we don't understand what was the purpose of creating an individual who is subject to ignorance, suffering, pain and death. But now when you have your all knowledge, you understand why that was necessary. That's what he said. The all knowledge justifies to him his creation of himself and justifies by him, perfected, its creation of the world. You understand both the reason for the creation of the world as well as the reason for the creation of the individual. All this becomes entirely real and effective by an ascension into a supramental and supreme supernature. Supernature, Paraprakriti. At the lower level, Aparaprakriti, mechanical conscious energy. At the higher level, Paraprakriti, conscious and not mechanical at all, it is conscious. And Paraprakriti can also possess God. And the Purusha also can possess Prakriti, both. They possess each other. Depends on the experience you have. You can experience both. And the descent of its powers into the manifestation. But even while that consummation is still difficult and distant, the true knowledge can be made subjectively real by spiritual reflection or reception in mind, life, body, nature. In other words, glimpses of this third level can be had even at the lower planes of existence. That's very important. So now we can go to the next paragraph. But this spiritual truth and prove it.
Can I ask a
Yes,
question?
Jasmine, if you have the next read.
No, can I ask a question? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you very faint, but I can hear you.
You know, recently there was a tornado in America in Tennessee, and it destroyed so much. So that is mechanical energy which is unconscious, or is it a power of the hostile vital beings?
No, it's not hostile. It's just a play of the divine energy. And whether it is conscious or unconscious depends on the observer. If you are at the lower level, like we are, it seems to be mechanical and unconscious. But when you are in a higher level of consciousness, you see that everything has a purpose. So you see that even that tornado which came, it had a purpose. And that purpose also you understand at that level. But if you are yourself at a lower level, you don't understand. The, everything has a purpose in life. But depends at which level you are and what you are understanding. Okay? If you are at the kindergarten level, you will understand one thing. If you are in school, you will understand one thing. And when you have graduated and come out and you have a PhD degree, you will understand much more. So that the phenomena all takes place everywhere, but God's creation is always with meaning. But we don't see the meaning. It depends on the individual at what level he is. Okay, Yasmin?
Yes, I can read now.
Yeah. Go ahead, read.
But this spiritual truth and true aim of his being is not allowed to appear till late in his journey, for the early preparatory business of man in the evolutionary steps of nature is to affirm, to make distinct and rich, to possess fully, firmly, powerfully, and completely his own individuality. As a consequence, he has in the beginning principally to occupy himself with his own ego. In this egoistic phase of his evolution, the world and others are less important to him than himself, are indeed only important as aids and occasions for his self affirmation. God, too, at this stage, is less important to him than he is to himself, and therefore, in earlier formations, on the lower levels of religious development, God or the gods are treated as if they existed for man, as supreme instruments for the satisfaction of his desires, his helpers in his task of getting the world in which he lives to satisfy his needs and wants and ambitions. The primary egoistic development, with all its sins and violence and crudities, is by no means to be regarded in its proper place as an evil or an error of nature. It is necessary for man's first work, the finding of his own individuality and its perfect disengagement from the lower subconscious, in which the individual is overpowered by the mass consciousness of the world and entirely subject to the mechanical workings of nature. Man, the individual, has to affirm, to distinguish his personality against nature, to be powerfully himself, to evolve all his human capacities of force and knowledge and enjoyment, so that he may turn them upon her and upon the world with more and more mastery and force. His self-discriminating egoism is given him as a means for his primary purpose. Until he has thus developed his individuality, his personality, his separate capacity, he cannot be fit for the greater work before him or successfully turn his faculties to higher, larger, and more divine ends. He has to affirm himself in the ignorance before he can perfect himself in the knowledge.
Yeah. So we can put this whole paragraph in one way. We can say that the ordinary rickshawala, okay, is not fit to know the divine. It's a way of speaking. If you are ignorant, okay, and you have no knowledge of yourself or the universe or anything, you are not fit for that. So you have to first develop yourself. This is exactly what happened with Vivekananda when some children came to him and said, "We want to do yoga." So Vivekananda told them, "You want to do yoga? Are you fit for that? So have you ever played football? Have you told a lie? Go and experience the world." Okay? And then when you experience the world and then you feel the need of knowing the divine, then come and say that I want to do yoga, not before that. And very clearly you can see that. In ashram, there are several cases where they said that they want to do yoga. And what happened? They were not ready for it. So there are two cases. In one case, the person completed knowledge and the parents said, "Come and help us in the business." Then the person said, "No, I don't want to go to your business. I want to remain in the ashram for a spiritual life." After 5-6 years, the person got married and led an ordinary life. Not ready. So don't go prematurely into the higher levels unless you are ready and prepared. And for that, you have to go and understand your egoistic life first. Develop the ego, and once you have developed it fully, throw it away. Like the scaffolding that you use to build a building. Once the building is done, throw the scaffolding away. You don't need it. So the ego is very necessary at one level. And you must not see it as evil. It's a necessity at that level. That's what Sendhil is pointing out. Okay? We have got 8 minutes. I will go through it. I've told you in summary what he has said, and we'll see each sentence. Okay? But the spiritual truth and the true aim of his being is not allowed to appear till late in the journey. What is the spiritual truth and true aim of his being? To know God, to know the universe, and to know himself. This is the aim of the integral aim of spiritual life. The spiritual truth and true aim of his being is not allowed to appear till late in his journey. And for the early preparatory business of man in the evolutionary structure of nature is to affirm, to make distinct and rich, to possess firmly, powerfully, and completely his own individuality. You have to develop yourself fully by knowledge in the mind, by right action in the vital, and with a healthy body. You have to first understand all these things. Then you are ready for the next stage of life. As a consequence, he has in the beginning principally to occupy himself with his own ego. So we come back to the famous sentence, ego was the helper, ego becomes the bar. So first use the ego as the helper. In this egoistic phase of his evolution, the world and others are less important to him than himself, are indeed only important as aids and occasions for his self-evolution. He uses the universe for his own benefit. And that's okay for him if he is at that level, preparatory level. God too at this stage is less important to him than he is to himself. Okay? And therefore, in earlier formations, on the lower levels of religious development, God or the gods are treated as if they existed for man. They exist for your benefit. As supreme instruments for the satisfaction of his desires. That's why you always pray to God for your success in your ordinary aims of life. He helps in his task of getting the world in which he lives to satisfy his needs and wants and ambitions. He's putting it in a very general way, but it's very, very obvious. We all do that. We all do that. Whenever you want something, you pray to God for success. He is there to help you only. This primary egoistic development, with all its sins and violences and crudities, is by no means to be regarded in its proper place as an evil and an error of nature. You are certainly saying, at the level of the ego, yes, there are ambitions and there are wants and needs, and he has to satisfy themselves. But you don't need to see it as something evil. But when you go to a higher level of consciousness, you can see that the ego and all these things, they had a purpose. There is a purpose. But when you are there, a sensitive person will see it as evil, and he is justified in seeing it as evil. It is necessary for man's first work, the finding of his own individuality and its perfect disengagement from the lower subconscious, in which the individual is overpowered by the mass consciousness of the world and entirely subject to the mechanical workings of nature. In the normal man is completely subject to the mechanical workings of nature. And the mass consciousness, the physical consciousness, absolutely overpowers it. And the individual has to affirm, to distinguish his personality against nature. Now, note, against nature. But later on, he distinguishes his personality with nature, along with nature. But now at this level, he has to fight against nature, because the whole universe, he is trying to work against him because he is working only for himself. So this is what Sri said in another place. First of all, you are working against nature. And later on, you work with nature. To distinguish his personality against nature. To be powerfully himself. To evolve all his human capacities of force, knowledge and enjoyment, so that he may turn them upon her, who is her nature, and upon the world with more and more mastery and force. His self-discriminating egoism is given him as a means for his primary purpose. So primary purpose, the ego is a very useful instrument. You have to develop yourself. Until he has thus developed his individuality, his personality, his separate capacity, he cannot be fit for the greater work before him or successfully turn his faculties to higher, larger and more divine ends. He has to affirm himself in the ignorance before he can perfect himself in the knowledge. So, this is exactly the story of Vivekananda, who told those young boys, go and play football, go and tell lies, go experience the world, and then come back. So, this is what he said. So, we have only got 2 minutes left, so we'll stop here today. Next week, we'll take up for the initiation of the evolutionary emergence. Okay? I'm making a note. 7:20, we have to read next week. On Wednesday next. Okay? So,
Merci beaucoup.
okay. Au revoir, everybody. Have a nice day.
Thank you, Rangada.